Okay, hello. We're SciComm. We are focused on science communication, and welcome to this talk about jargon. Um, Most of this is my opinion, and I'm like not a great person, so take it with a grain of salt and just kind of, you know, chill. Yes. Anyways, uh,
Cool. I wanted to just quickly plug for those of you watching the undergraduate oral presentation that SciComm is holding on November 7th from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. We're also accepting pre-made videos. So if you can't make that time for some reason or you don't want to, you can pre-record your lecture and submit it, and we will show it during one of the slots there. It's about a 15-minute lecture with about 5 minutes of questions afterwards. So if you have research that you want to present, if you have been out of the lab for a while and you want to really impress your PI, if you need to make biology honors, this qualifies for that as well. So register by scanning that QR code on screen. Registration is open through October 25th, 2020. So we hope to see you guys there.
okay, cool. Thank you for the plug. Okay, so before we start this talk on jargon, what is jargon? Does anybody have any ideas? Type in the chat or speak. Wonderful. Nobody has ideas. Okay, that's fantastic. Jargon. So some words that usually come up when people think about jargon. Jargon tends to be specialized. It tends to be technical, and it tends to refer to very specific ideas. So, for example, like the word work, right? Usually it's like a word you use in everyday life, but in physics, work has a very specific meaning, right? Jargon is also usually context dependent. So same thing, the example with work means a very specific thing in physics, but not so specific when you're just talking. Jargons can be obscure. They frequently are pretty obscure, and acronyms are a big part of what jargons are or what people think of when they think of jargon. So, and here is kind of how the paper we're going to talk about today defines jargon. It is a specialized technical vocabulary terms that are associated with a situational context or purpose and are rarely used outside of these circumstances. So that's jargon, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so why does jargon exist, right? Because, if we're using these obscure specialized words and our goal, in language is to communicate with people, why do we use obscure words? Why don't we use words that everybody understands? Does anyone have any ideas? Type in the chat or say it out loud. I imagine this to be more interactive, or I guess with more people, but that's fine. I'll just talk to myself. Okay. Why does jargon exist? Yes.
I think
go on.
jargon exists to help impress people. I think when there's phrases that are thrown around, especially in science and other types of research, there are fancy phrases that are kind of just buzzwords, right? And they really impress people when they're in a paper.
Yes, definitely. Excellent. Impressing people is a huge part of why people use jargon. In fact, when you watch movies or TV shows, how do they show that someone's a scientist? They get that person to say a bunch of, like techno babble. I don't know what that means. They're a scientist. So yes, why does jargon exist? The paper we're going to talk about has it kind of narrowed down to 3 reasons: demonstrating expertise, which is what you said. Refer to specialized ideas in a concise manner. So if you think about a word, like, I don't know, what is a Likert scale, right? It's a very specialized idea. You're rating kind of how much you agree with something on this numerical scale, and it's referring to specialized ideas in a concise manner, and it's used to refer to very specific ideas. So like what we said with the word work, it means a very specific thing in physics, but not so much outside of it. Okay, so that's why jargons exist. Examples of jargon: can anybody think of any jargon that demonstrates expertise? I'm just kidding. All of them demonstrates expertise. You cannot say a bunch of scientific jargon and, not have people either think you're an expert or think you're showing off. referring to specialized ideas in a concise manner. Lots of jargon like this. Pretty much all the jargons are invented to refer to specialized ideas in a concise manner and in referring to specific ideas. So, for example, so like strength, hardness, toughness, these words all kind of mean the same thing in real life, but like they have their own very specific definition in mechanical engineering. So for example, toughness is the area under a stress strain curve and stuff. So demonstrating expertise, referring to specialized ideas, or referring to specific ideas that, you know, mean something different outside the context. Now, $1 million question, is jargon bad? Absolutely. You shouldn't have to listen to me in a presentation tell you this, okay? Jargon is really bad when you're communicating to like a lay audience. And I mean, personal experience should be enough to tell you this, right? Like, you don't like listening to people when you can't understand them. That should be just kind of basic intuition, but we'll kind of observe, we'll kind of more empirically, I guess, demonstrate that with a study we're going to talk about. So this is a study we're going to be talking about. It is titled Jargon as a Barrier to Effective Science Communication, Evidence from Metacognition. It is locked behind a paywall. Very unfortunate. Looks like jargon isn't the only barrier to science communication, but whatever. So what does this study look at? This study looks at how the amount of jargon affects three things: processing fluency, motivated resistance to persuasion, and risk perception or support. So what are these things? For processing fluency, it is kind of like the ease or difficulty with which, you know, new information is processed, right? So if a text or, you know, a piece of, you know, data is fluent, you know, this new information comes easily and it feels familiar to the reader. Motivated resistance to persuasion is like the person's tendency or the motivation to oppose or resist perceived efforts to change, you know, the things they already believe in. So yeah, that's MRP. And risk perception and support is measuring if removing the jargon can change how people feel about new information, you know, whether they think it's more risky or whether they're more likely to support it. So how do they test this? They had 650 participants. It was an online survey. All the participants were from US. The mean age was like 20. And each participant read 3 paragraphs about 3 emerging technologies: medical bioprinters, self-driving cars, and surgical robots. And the paragraphs either contain jargon, had their jargon replaced with a word or phrase that expresses the same idea but is easier to understand, or contain jargon, but, you know, they can use their mouse to hover over the jargon and to see a definition of the jargon. And obviously a bunch of things are controlled for. For example, all the paragraphs have the same length. Each paragraph had 10 jargons. Oh yeah, by the way, the definitions for condition C, those are the same as the like alternate phrases in condition B. So remember that. Okay, anyways, they control for a lot of things. So each paragraph, same amount of words. Each paragraph had the same structure. They all had 3 sentences. The first sentence provided context. The second described how the tech worked. And the third described possible risks. And yeah, so participants read the paragraphs and then they were immediately given scales to measure, you know, their processing fluency, MRP, and risk support. So they were asked questions like, a lot of the terms felt familiar to me, and they will have like a strongly disagree, you know, neutral, agree strongly. Yeah, they're asked questions like that, and that's how the processing fluency and MRP are measured. Okay, so what are the results? What did researchers found? So adding jargon to text makes reading experience much less fluent. This should come as no surprise, okay? If you're reading a text with a lot of unfamiliar and obscure words, of course, you're going to have more difficulty processing the information. Yeah, that shouldn't be surprising. Adding jargon influences perceptions of risk. Adding jargon reduces support, and whether the definition for the jargon are provided have no effect on the 3 measures. That's what's surprising, right? It makes sense that adding jargon would, you know, make it harder to absorb the new information, but why does adding jargon make you almost, you know, distrust the new information? And the authors, they provide a very interesting kind of theory for this. And the theory is the title naive theory. I have not encountered it before. It's probably exists. It's been a while since I've taken psychology class, but they summarize theory, and what it basically states is that information that feel familiar is good. Information that feel familiar is safe, and we like it more, right? It's like the I forgot what it's called. It's a thing like TV commercials. They show it a lot of times, and you go to the store and you see a product that you've seen before in a commercial, and it feels familiar by it. I don't know what it's called, but yes, thank you. That's so yeah. That is what the authors proposed was underlying this mechanism of why making a text, appear unfamiliar influences, how basically how well your information is being perceived, right? And I think whether the result that adding definitions for the jargon, so adding the ability to hover over a jargon and see the definitions doesn't affect processing fluency or risk or support is also quite telling. And the authors propose a mechanism for this. They think that by making the definition disconnected from the text, the reader feels that the text isn't meant for them, and they're more likely to resist the ideas. And I think that makes sense too. And we'll talk about implications of those later. So yeah, whether adding definition had no effect, important result. Okay, so what does this mean? This means if you use jargon when advocating for an idea, people will have more difficulty understanding your idea. People will support your idea less, and people will find your idea more risky. So very big, I guess, implications. If you're trying to advocate for a position or, for adoption of new technologies, do not use jargon. And okay, yeah, we're going to talk about implications now. So oops, we kind of already talked about it. If you're advocating for new technologies like electric cars or, whatever new stuff is there, fuel cells, vaccines, don't use jargon because people will see that and they will, at least according to the study, right, they will see it and they will support it less. So how do we avoid jargon, right? Usually the most typical thing that comes to mind for avoiding jargon is if you see a jargon, why don't you just explain it, right? So for example, if you have a jargon, if we have the sentence, the heat transfer in the quasi-equilibrium process is equal to the change in enthalpy if pressure is constant. And let's say the reader is unfamiliar with the term quasi-equilibrium, right? Why don't you just put in, parentheses and, explain what a term is, right? And yeah, usually we can do that, but there are some, I guess, intricacies that has to do with explaining jargon. And what are those? Okay, to explain the intricacies involved with explaining jargon, let's look at how language works and what language is. So what is language? What is communication? All right, let's suppose you have an idea, all right? You're the center of the idea. The idea is some amorphous blob that exists in your brain. Examples of ideas include Jim smells today, that tree is red, 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, ideas. So what we do with language is that we package those ideas into, discrete packets, and we send it. So language is an intermediary between the ideas. So if we have those ideas, Jim smells, tree red, etc., we can put it into language. So we can put Jim smells today into usual order is emanating from Jim, tree is red into that. I'm not going to read it. 1 + 1 = 2 into 1 + 1 = 2. And then the receiver of the language will reconstruct the idea based on the language. So here is an example of how they might reconstruct it. Jim died, unfortunate. Glowing dark penis, unfortunate. 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, that's how language is. And there is a huge room for misinterpretation and mistakes to happen between the language getting sent out and it's being decoded by the receiver. Yes. So language is made out of discrete packets of ideas, words, right? And whenever you're using a word to express an idea, you're kind of balancing a trade-off between conciseness and specificity, right? If you think of an idea as like a mass, right? Conciseness is kind of how many little packets of mass you sent out, and specificity is how dense each of those packets are. You have to convey the same mass of idea. It's a question of, how many packets of discrete ideas, words you use, and how dense they are. So let's look at an example of this. Determinant, right? That's a jargon. How do we express that? So we can be not specific and not concise in our language to express the idea of determinant, right? We can, this is maybe something like your TA will say to you, or, if you're asking your friend about this the night before test, that might be what they say to you. We can also be not specific and concise, or sorry, we can be specific and not concise. This is what the textbook might say, or this is what your prof might say to you, right? Notice that it uses more jargon to define the jargon. Okay, we can also be not specific and concise. So this one may be probably how those pop science documentaries explain the idea. If you ever seen those documentaries by Nova, or I guess to an extent even Bill Nye videos, they would kind of really vague, hand wave, give you a vague intuition of what the jargon means with a not specific but concise idea. And well, for the last one, how can you be specific and concise? You use the word itself, right? That's how you be specific and concise. So the things on the left column, right, not specific things, these are easy to understand for lay audiences, because if the idea you use to express the idea determinant is not specific, you can use more common words to express it, and that will make it easier to understand. On the other hand, never, ever, ever try to explain a jargon using specific and non-concise words, or never try to do it in a specific and non-concise way, right? Look at what's happening here. You're explaining jargon with more jargon. What is a linear transformation? How can area be signed? What is parallelepiped, right? Lots of questions. Do not do this. Please don't be one of those people who do this. Okay. And so yeah, that's how you explain ideas. So obviously none of this is perfect, right? If you can just really easily explain a jargon and have this reader understand it perfectly, people don't need to spend 4 years to study for degrees. So all the ways to express an idea, a jargon, in the not specific column, those are not perfect solutions, right? They're like a band-aid. They're like to get an intuition of the idea across, and so you can continue with saying whatever you want to say about your research. So just want to make that clear. Okay, so what we just talked about was how do you effectively explain a jargon, but there are other things that you need to watch out for when communicating science that isn't just explaining unfamiliar terms. So for example, in language, there are often different ways to say the same thing, right? And in academic journals, people typically will look for a more obscure way to say a very common, normal, natural thing in order to, I don't know, I guess, appear smart. So for example, heightened scrutiny. What is a different way of saying heightened scrutiny that doesn't use heightened and scrutiny? Look carefully, right? There's fundamentally, or there's practically nothing different between the two phrases, but one, how many syllables are they? They're like, what? Freaking 7 syllables. The other one, well, it's like 6 syllables, but like, look carefully, it just sounds, it's much easier to understand, right? Heightened scrutiny, you gotta take a moment to get it. Similar thing, same thing with, this one, intrinsic dissimilarities, fundamental differences, right? Different ways of expressing the same idea, but one is just more difficult to understand than the other. And I'm not gonna read the last one, but yeah, different ways of expressing the same idea. And notice there's no increase in specificity going from left to right. You're not being more specific when you say intrinsic dissimilarities than we say fundamental differences, right? So basically, if you're communicating science to a lay audience, there's no point to use more obscure words. So use common words. Another thing is that, very important, break up your sentences, okay? If we think about going back to what languages and what ideas are, right? Sentence is kind of like the next unit up of language, right? Sentence is a word is fundamental unit. Sentence is the next one. Maybe phrase is between that, but I don't know, whatever. And with a sentence, what you're doing is that from the start of the sentence to the end, to the period, or wherever the end of the sentence is, you're asking the reader to keep in mind all of the information that is in the sentence until the end, right? And for long ass sentences like this one, that's a hard thing to do. So break up your sentences, right? You can see if you break up the sentences, it makes it more easier. It makes it easier to understand because you don't have this long blob of ideas. You're breaking it into smaller chunks, and chunking is effective for recall and stuff. That's yeah. No. Anyways, so to summarize, explain lay audience. Do you mean anyone not in your field? Yeah, I mean lay audience. I guess when I wrote this, what I was thinking in terms of lay audience is just like the general public, But yeah, I guess that could apply, right? Just anyone who's not familiar with what you're talking about. You want to explain it to them. Actually, I'm not sure. Maybe with other experts, they will understand that, like, if you use jargon, it's a part of it because they use jargon. Who knows? I don't know. When I use the audience, I mean general public. Yeah. Anyways, to recap, explain unfamiliar terms, and do not do the thing where you explain a jargon with more jargon. Use common words, break up sentences. Okay, exercise this time. How would you translate, or I guess rewrite the above sentence so it's less jargony and easier to understand? And once again, I imagine this with more participation, but whatever. So this is how I chose to rewrite it. Here's the next one. The 4 people attending can take a moment to read it, I guess, if they want. And here's how I chose to kind of rewrite it. Next one. Next one.
Can we try this one?
Yes.
Okay, give us a second. Let me read it.
Sounds good.
I'm used to reading papers. I'm like, this is normal.
Oh man.
Okay, my crack at it is hybrid rocket engines are dangerous. No, are not dangerous. Okay, see, I didn't even. Okay, take 2. Hybrid rocket engines are safe because and used for a lot of things, including launch vehicles. I don't quite know what upper stage propulsion is, but that's jargon, so I got caught. Strategic missile systems and commercial space transportation.
Great. Anyone else want to give a try? Or no? That's okay too. Okay.
Oh, wait, go.
Oh no,
Sorry.
I can't contribute any more than that. Honestly, I don't know what upper stage propulsion is.
I will try.
Yes, go.
I would say, yeah, thank you for providing that propulsion systems equals engines, Mickey, by the way, because I was like, I don't know. Yeah, so I'd say hybrid. So because hybrid rocket engines are super safe and have some very cool built-in features, they are great choices to be used for a lot of different things, including kind of being the first source of energy to launch a vehicle, to be used in like later stages of the space flight as well, and also to be used in other non-space applications like missile systems and commercial space transportation, which is space, but not like NASA space. We can take that part out.
Great. All right. Good translation. This is how I chose to do it. There's like no right answer to this. It's just, how you take, the ideas presented in like a jumbled amount of phrases and whatever, and you sort the ideas out and you represent them in like a different way. Okay, and just for fun, here are some more, I guess, examples. These are more bios, so maybe you guys would be more suited for this. I don't know. This is, and yeah, okay. Thanks for coming to the Jargon event, everyone.